Mr. President, on a separate topic, we are 3 weeks away from our annual deadline to fund the government, one of the most essential tasks in Congress. It is hard to imagine, just weeks before the presidential election, that the Republican Speaker of the House would risk a government shutdown and really guarantee an image of chaos in his service to this country. Here in the Senate, under the leadership of Appropriations Committee Chair Patty Murray of Washington and Ranking Member Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, we passed 11 out of the 12 spending bills out of the committee on a bipartisan basis. We are doing our jobs in the Senate. But unfortunately, recent history is repeating itself in the House under the leadership of Speaker Johnson. Instead of coming to the negotiating table with their Democratic colleagues, the only way to pass meaningful legislation in a divided Congress, or following the budget deal signed into law last year, they've been crafting partisan bills full of cuts and poison pills. And now, rather than take the Senate's lead in prioritizing responsible funding, a bill that actually can become law, House Republicans are once again trying to delay long-term funding agreements at the expense of the American people. House Republicans introduced a continuing resolution to push our job to fund the government until March of next year, 6-month delay from our annual deadline on September 30th. As if this wasn't already a blow to our nation, which relies on critical programs that depend on this funding, the Speaker is once again hitching his already misguided government funding wagon to an outrageous and partisan provision. This time it's the so-called SAVE Act. The so-called Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, would make it more difficult for American citizens to register to vote and would inevitably lead to eligible registered voters being purged from the voter rolls. Two things. First, it is already against the law in every state in the nation for non-citizens to vote. Second, non-citizens rarely, if ever, vote. In the extreme rare scenario, when a non-citizen votes, listen to this, that individual can be federally prosecuted and sentenced for up to 5 years in prison. 5 years for a non-citizen voting. Put simply, there is no need for additional criminal penalties to deter non-citizen voting. The reality is that the SAVE Act would create problem barriers for American citizens who are legally eligible to vote. Instead, we should be working together on bipartisan legislation to address real threats to our election, such as AI technologies that can be used to spread disinformation to voters. The American people are tired of partisan bickering. They want us to do our job on a bipartisan basis. I encourage Speaker Johnson and House Republicans, put politics aside. Like the Senate, take your duty seriously to fund the government and avoid unnecessary and damaging shutdown. To the Speaker, like it or not, this requires working with the other side of the aisle to find common ground. The American people expect it of us. Let's get it done. I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of a quorum.